Hey there. We're going to be talking in this video about 4 steps in developing your style naturally. In earlier videos, I talked about how trying to force style simply doesn't work. You can't force things to happen. But what you can do is to set yourself up for success by creating what I like to think about as an incubation pool for whatever your next project is going to be. So I'm going to share with you what I think of as my formula for setting myself up to grow a new idea. It's one of the reasons I've told students I don't ever worry about what to paint. What to paint grows very naturally out of what I've already painted. So if you've done the assessment in the previous lesson, you're going to have some pretty good ideas about directions you might want to go in. Then one of the ways that makes that happen pretty fluidly is to create a framework for that new project to develop, kind of like having a playpen for a toddler to grow in a really safe way. So think of your next project, your next series, as being that toddler. You want to put the toddler into the playpen and give them some toys to play with and see what happens as far as their growth and development occurs. So let's look at what those 4 steps are and some of the things you can do to put those to work for you. Those 4 steps that I talked about are: number 1, to feed your imagination and creativity. Number 2, to know yourself and know yourself really well. Number 3 is to develop a daily practice. And number 4, the really, in so many ways, most important one is to establish accountability. So let's go through these one at a time and talk about some different ways that you can implement them. So that first step is to feed your imagination and your creativity. You want to think about this as a well that can run dry if you don't keep feeding it. None of us can operate from a vacuum. And all too often, we forget to input in order to get quality output. So one of the primary things that you can do to develop a new series, to get ideas for what you want to paint, is to pursue the things that interest you, even if they seem totally unrelated to art. They will feed your imagination. They'll feed your creative well. So make sure that you add to those things. It could be reading your favorite novelist, reading about your favorite topics. All of those things will spark ideas. It could be looking at good art in person. So get to a gallery or a museum or someplace where you can see actual art, not a reproduction. So anywhere you live, you'll be able to find some examples of good art that you can visit in person. If you're in the rare instance of being too far away, plan a trip, a quarter, to feed that imagination as far as looking at real art goes. Looking at reproductions is great, but it cannot take the place of seeing the real art. That's where you get to see the physical texture, the surface, and really experience the scale. So I know we've all gotten used to looking at things on the internet, but get out of the studio, get out of your house, and go look at some art. You can also talk to other artists. You can find an artist community online, even if you can't find one in person where you're located. But chances are pretty good that there's a network of artists where you are. What are some ways to find them? Primarily, go to, again, the galleries. If you start going to openings and art events, you'll find people of like mind. It's really necessary to get out there and become part of that community. It's going to feed so many other things besides just your imagination and creativity. Another thing that you can do is to listen to podcasts about art. I love listening to podcasts, and not just podcasts, but YouTube videos. So there are innumerous videos from artists, of recordings of artists talking about their work. One of my favorite artists to listen to is Wolf Kahn, who is so authentic, honest, and expressive in discussing the ideas that are behind his paintings. Another artist to search for would be Wayne Thiebaud. Again, very, very articulate, very authentic in what he shares about his work. So in looking at podcasts, also substitute just the word video. But I want you to listen to the actual words of the artist, if possible, with them speaking them. We take in information differently when it's in audio form versus written form. Watch art and artist videos. So watch videos about art. Watch videos, documentaries, for instance, about artists. There are great films out there about the lives of artists that will help spark your imagination. You might think it doesn't relate to what you want to do, but it will help move that creative brain cell forward to the next step. It works back there and marinates in ways that you just can't even necessarily identify. So think about reading about topics that interest you, about other artists, about life in general, the passions that drive you. Think about going to look at good art in person, get out, go to galleries and museums. Think about talking to other artists, whether it's in person or online. Find a community of like-minded spirits that you can talk to and share ideas. Listen to podcasts about art. There are so many on iTunes. Just hop over there, type in art or painting, and see what pops up. Same thing for watching art and artist videos. All of these things will help to feed your imagination and your creativity and will form a sort of nutrient bed for the ideas that you're going to develop to grow. The second thing that is a step towards developing your next project is to know yourself. We can't talk about ourselves and our work until we get to know ourselves really well, and until we get to the point where we're comfortable expressing our thoughts about ourselves and about our work. There are lots of ways to do that, and some may fit you more than others. So knowing yourself means taking time for reflection in some way, shape, or form. There are all kinds of different forms that can take. It could be that you're going to start journaling about your ideas. It could be that you're going to start talking into Google Docs if you don't want to write on paper. But I want to strongly recommend, even if you don't think of yourself as being a journaling type of person, that you think about putting a literal pen to a literal piece of paper. Even if you're not writing for very long, it'll make a profound difference in your being able to connect to your ideas. You need to get your ideas out of your head and onto paper. And our brain connects much more directly to pen and paper than it does to writing on the computer. So I want to challenge everybody to start journaling every day. And a really good practice that is suggested by Julia Cameron in her great book, The Artist's Way, is to journal for 3 pages a day, to do it first thing in the morning. It's definitely part of my morning ritual and has been for decades. I have a whole row on my bookshelf of journals, which make it really, really easy to look back and see where my mind was in the past and to reflect back on other ideas that I put in the parking lot that I might want to bring forward. So a journal doesn't have to be formal writing. It can be anything. In fact, I agree with Cameron, who suggests at the beginning, when you're having a really hard time nailing down that journaling habit, that you just give yourself permission to free flow write. Don't think about sentences. Don't think about grammar. You can write in bullet points. You can put one word to a line, but get 3 pages down. The sooner you can get yourself to 3 pages and doing that consistently over time, the easier you're going to find journaling to be. Now, those pages are not front and back. It's the front or the back, just like when you're reading a book. I love getting composition notebooks. That's what I generally write in. But pick out a journal that works for you and a size that works for you. So each person is going to be a little bit different on that. You might like a larger journal. You might like a smaller journal. You may want to journal in your sketchbook. All of those things are fine. You might want to write it with a pencil. You might want to write with a pen. Again, all fine. The real important thing here is the doing. You need to really, really get comfortable in communicating your own ideas. And the only way to do that is to take time for reflection and get your thoughts out of your head onto paper. Journaling doesn't have to be intimidating. Try just doing a couple of sentences a day to begin with and then build up over time. But get those ideas out of the brain and onto the paper. The third thing that will help you in moving forward towards that next body of work is developing a daily practice for your painting. Now, this can take, again, all kind of forms, and it doesn't necessarily have to be more than 20 minutes a day. I'm a big proponent of what you can get done in 20 to 30 minutes a day. So let's look at what some of those options might be. Journaling is certainly part of that practice. You could even develop a visual journal, otherwise known as a sketchbook. Sketchbooks are extraordinarily useful, and if you want to do your writing and your sketching at the same time, go for it. But the sketchbook is where you can work out your ideas before you make that commitment to a larger scale canvas or panel, before you've made that expense commitment of materials and time. So work out your ideas in thumbnail form in your sketchbook. If you have any questions about that, about what I mean by thumbnails and about what I mean by notans, go to Composition, Color, and Light and review the first 2 modules, because that is the heart of the beginning of that course. And if you do nothing else towards establishing a daily practice, other than working in your sketchbook and building thumbnails every day, you're going to see your paintings take a huge step forward. So think about implementing sketchbook at the same time as you do journal. The third thing I want you to think about folding into your daily practice is painting itself. Again, big proponent of the 20 to 30 minutes a day. So it could be that all you do a day, that you commit to doing a day, is a 20-minute painting. Got questions about that? Again, pop back over to Composition, Color, and Light and look at the module on that. It's in the introduction. So doing short 10 to 20-minute paintings where you allow yourself to commit to making a quick painting that doesn't have to be perfect is another surefire way to move your painting practice forward. So let's get those 20-minute activities on. Do something for 20 to 30 minutes a day that's going to work to your painting muscle, that's going to move your daily your painting practice forward. So let's just go over the last thing here. I said earlier it's one of the most important, and it really is. Because one of the things that makes a habit solidify is accountability. And there are all kinds of ways to become accountable. You can become accountable by making goals and being accountable to yourself. By making those goals and by putting them out there publicly. Share them with someone you trust. Don't just share your goals with anybody, because that's a recipe to have the wind knocked out of you. Make sure that you're sharing those goals with someone that you trust, someone who's not going to betray that trust. An example of a place where you can do that is right over in our very own Facebook group. So share those with someone you trust. I want you to make sure that you do something towards each one of these steps. And in order to do that, I've got a worksheet for you. It's really a kind of a contract. So I want you to download and print out the worksheet for this lesson and commit to doing at least one thing in each of these 4 areas to help move yourself forward, to help nurture the development of that next series. Share with the group, because that's one of the quickest ways to get feedback and to be held accountable so that we know what you're working on and can help you in that process.